The doctors at Manhwa Hospital finish operating on Kang Mu and step out to announce that the surgery was successful. The men waiting anxiously outside breathe a sigh of relief and quickly call their boss to update them, promising to get in touch if any new developments arise. Among them is Tigu, who has also been waiting at the hospital. When he hears the good news, he's visibly annoyed and frustrated. Tigu returns to the hospital again later to check on Kang Mu. As he approaches the hallway outside Kang Mu's room, he notices it's filled with Kang Mu's men, all looking downcast. Tigu, irritated, asks them why they look so down as if it's a funeral. He then spots Chung-sun nearby and notices he has a fresh wound. Tigu asks Chung-sun what happened, and Chung-sun casually brushes it off, saying he simply fell down the stairs. Tigu hands Chung-sun a gift basket, remarking that no one else would enjoy it as much as he would and adding that it wasn't cheap. The men thank him, and Tigu enters Kang Mu's room. Standing beside Kang Mu, who is still unconscious, Tigu smirks and comments that when he was stabbed, he was thrown into a cramped, 4-person hospital room, while Kang Mu's room feels more like a luxurious hotel suite than a hospital room. As Kang Mu lies silently, Tigu urges him to stop pretending and say something. He wonders aloud if Kang Mu is really listening, or if he's just putting on an act to frustrate him until the end. When Kang Mu still doesn't respond, Tigu suggests, half seriously, that maybe he should just kill him right there. Suddenly, the EEG monitor shows an increase in Kang Mu's heart rate, causing Tigu to smirk as he reassures him that he's just joking. He adds that there's nothing he can do about it anyway, with his men stationed all over the place. Tigu tells Kang Mu he only dropped by out of curiosity, explaining that, no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't figure out why Pildo would let Kang Mu off so easily. He asks what they talked about back then, and Kang Mu's heart rate spikes again. This time, the doctors rush in to check on him, forcing Tigu to leave. As he walks out, Tigu thinks to himself that Kang Mu clearly doesn't want to discuss it, so he'll have to go ask Pildo directly. Out in the hospital parking lot, Tigu heads to his car, only to be surprised by Chawuk sitting in the passenger seat, waiting for him. Tigu looks reluctant and tells Chawuk he could have just called. He then asks why Chawuk decided to come here in person. Chawuk replies that he did want to call, but Tigu always seemed too busy, always running around, so he figured the desperate one should make an effort to come. Chawuk then informs Tigu that the doctors have said Kang Mu will never be the same again, even if he wakes up. Tigu responds calmly, saying he already expected as much. Kang Mu lost an extreme amount of blood, and if Tigu hadn't arrived when he did, they'd be planning a funeral right now. Chawuk nods in agreement and adds that the way Kang Mu was attacked suggests the assailant had every intention of killing him. He explains that the stab was aimed directly at the lung, a single, expertly placed strike intended to do the most damage with minimal effort. Tigu begins to sweat nervously, but Chawuk continues, explaining that the attacker must be someone highly skilled with knives, who knew how to go in for the kill quietly and quickly without attracting any attention. Chawuk then points out that this doesn't sound like Pildo's style at all. Rather, it matches a technique that Tigu himself has used many times before. Tigu realizes he's in serious trouble, but tries to keep his composure. Chawuk then goes on to remind Tigu that he was the one who taught him how to use knives this way in the first place. Taking the doctor's report, Chawuk tears it into pieces, angrily calling the doctors incompetent for only barely managing to save Kang Mu. With a cold tone, he adds that if they couldn't do their job properly, they should have let Kang Mu die, because now, with his condition, he's become a major risk to the company. Chawuk then instructs Tigu to report to HQ for work the next day, pointing out that leaving Kang Mu's position vacant for too long wouldn't be beneficial. He steps out of the car and, seeing Tigu still sweating in shock, warns him not to do anything foolish behind his back. With that, he walks away. Once Chawuk is gone, Tigu sighs in relief, thinking his heart nearly gave out from the stress. He reassures himself to stay calm, reasoning that Chawuk has no real proof that he was behind Kang Mu's attack. But as he reflects, Tigu becomes even more frustrated, wondering if Chawuk is just toying with him, or if he actually knows something. He decides to let it go and focus on the positive. After all, he's now on his way to HQ. Just then, his henchman calls him, and Tigu picks up, mentioning that he was about to make a call himself. He instructs his henchman to pack up everything in his office since they'll be heading to HQ the next day. Tigu starts to laugh, boasting about his success, until he realizes there's complete silence on the other end. He pauses and asks if his henchman is listening to him, wondering why he's not getting any response. Suddenly, Tigu's henchman screams over the phone, apologizing frantically. The scene shifts to Tigu's office, where his men lie on the ground, bleeding and, in many cases, unconscious. The henchman shouts that Pildo has stormed into the office, effortlessly taking down everyone in his path, claiming he's looking for something. Pildo, who is actually the one who called Tigu, then punches the man, who cries out in pain, and Tigu's anger flares as he listens. Pildo speaks to Tigu, saying he was beginning to wonder why Tigu had become so hard to track down. But now it all makes sense. Tigu's been aiming to get to HQ for a long time, and he finally got what he wanted. Pildo adds, in a mocking tone, that he'll be sending a gift to celebrate Tigu's achievement. Then, Pildo sends a video file, which Tigu opens only to see himself in the footage, stabbing Kang Mu. Realizing Pildo had been watching and recording the whole assault, Tigu is overcome with frustration and rage. Tigu yells in fury, but Pildo only taunts him, saying he's glad to see that Tigu seems to appreciate the gift, judging by his happy reaction. Pildo then asks if Tigu would prefer him to bring the gift directly to him at HQ or if Tigu would rather come and collect it himself. Tigu arrives at the location where Pildo is waiting and finds only a few of his men there. He angrily asks why there are so few of them, demanding that everyone should be assembled immediately. The squad leader explains nervously that he called everyone as quickly as possible, but could only gather those who were nearby. Frustrated, Tigu strides angrily toward the man, as he does not hear him clearly. He suddenly slips, falls to the ground, and stands up even more irritated. He demands again to know why the others aren't here, and the man explains timidly that most of them went to the lower regions to attend the opening ceremony for Tigu's new club. Furious, Tigu stabs the man, yelling if he thinks now is the right time to be celebrating a club opening when Pildo is inside his building. He orders him to get the others back immediately. Looking up at the building, Tigu realizes he can't afford to just wait for his reinforcements to arrive. But entering the building directly feels too risky. He quickly decides on a strategy and instructs the men present to grab their weapons and go inside to attack Pildo head-on. The men pick up their bats and enter the building. Two of Tigu's other henchmen are about to follow when Tigu stops them, saying that the men who went in should be enough. He points out that since there's only one exit, there's no need for them to get dirty fighting on the ground. He plans to wait for Pildo to be worn out by the initial attack, assuming that Pildo will eventually come outside, and that will be their opportunity to strike him down. Meanwhile, at Manhwa HQ, Co Nambong, the director of management support, goes to meet Chawuk. Surprised by his rare visit, Chawuk asks why Nambong has come to see him. Nambong explains that he heard Chawuk called Tigu to HQ, so he wanted to find out more. Chawuk responds that with Kang Mu's position now vacant, it can't be left unfilled during such a busy period. According to company tradition, the next in line automatically steps up to fill an open position. Chawuk then asks Nambong if he's interested in the position himself. Nambong quickly denies it, saying he would never think of it, but he does express his concern. He explains that there was a reason Tigu was kept away from HQ in the first place, and asks if Chawuk is really sure that bringing him in is a wise decision. Chawuk acknowledges Nambong's concern. Comparing the two men, if Kang Mu was a loyal, obedient dog, Tigu is more of a wild dog, hard to control and unpredictable. Chawuk adds that with a dog like Tigu, they'll need to keep a tight leash on him for everyone's safety. But Nambong presses further, insisting that making Tigu president might be taking things too far. In response, Chawuk tells Nambong that he still needs to learn how things operate within the company. He explains that his decision to place Tigu in the vacant position wasn't just about filling the role. It's also a strategic move to keep his enemies close and under watch. Chawok then remarks that Tigu might transform completely once he's given the authority of that position. He points to Nambong as an example, saying he looks like just another salaryman in a suit now, and no one would suspect the man he used to be. He reassures Nambong, telling him not to worry about Tigu, and promising that he'll handle things personally. Nambong, however, is concerned and asks if Chawok intends to put Tigu in charge of Pildo. He insists that he can deal with Pildo himself, saying Tigu doesn't have to step in for this task. But Chawok corrects him, reminding Nambong that they both understand each other deeply, as brothers do. They both know that only one person is keeping the Manhwa group afloat. Meanwhile, Tigu's men storm into the building to confront Pildo. They taunt him, asking how much longer he thinks he can hold out. Despite being outnumbered and facing men armed with bats, while he's empty-handed, Pildo fights back, skillfully dodging their blows and taking them down one by one with his fists. Eventually, the last thug flees in fear. Undeterred, another of Tigu's henchmen charges at Pildo as he steps outside, but Pildo overpowers him as well. Watching from a distance, Tigu clutches his knife, observing as Pildo catches his breath. Pildo then approaches Tigu, taunting him by mockingly addressing him as President Tigu. He challenges him, saying that if Tigu has a problem with him, he should face him directly instead of sending others to do his bidding like a coward. Pildo comments that Tigu looks ready to stab him, just like he did to Kangmu. He questions if Tigu is that desperate to get a spot at headquarters, wondering how the Manhwa group will react when they find out about his actions. Instead of replying, Tigu lunges at Pildo with a knife, swinging and trying to slash him multiple times. Pildo manages to dodge each attempt. They exchange blows for a while, and Tigu observes that Pildo's movements seem slower than before. Feeling confident, Tigu closes in and manages to cut him, noting that Pildo isn't as fast as he used to be. However, Pildo had anticipated this and is wearing a stab-proof vest. Tigu mocks him, asking if the once fearless Pildo is now afraid, but Pildo simply stares back, unfazed. Tigu taunts Pildo further, saying that he almost thought Pildo was still a threat. He adds that he never understands why people act tough around him when they can't even resist once they're hurt. Tigu then charges forward to attack, accusing Pildo of being a fool for reappearing only to get in his way when he could have just stayed out of sight. The two begin fighting again, with Tigu slashing at Pildo with his knife and Pildo throwing powerful punches in return. After a while, Tigu manages to get close enough to press his knife against Pildo's neck. He sneers, saying he could kill Pildo in a fit of rage, but admits he won't do it because it wouldn't bring him any real advantage. Remembering the video Pildo sent him, Tigu comments that he already knows exactly what Pildo would start ranting about if he let him go. So maybe, he muses, he should just kill Pildo to avoid that headache. Pildo, however, remains unfazed and challenges Tigu, asking if he truly believes that killing him will magically hand the Manhwa group over to him. Not intimidated by the blade, Pildo coldly tells Tigu that even if he does somehow seize Kangmu's position, it would be a miracle if he could actually hold it. Tigu looks taken aback by Pildo's calm response, and Pildo explains that he's sure Tigu already knows deep down that, no matter what, he'll still be treated the same way even if he occupies that seat of power. Angrily, Tigu demands to know what Pildo thinks he understands and accuses him of pushing his luck, asking if he believes Tigu will spare him after saying such things. Pildo, undeterred, tells Tigu to think more carefully about what he truly desires. He then boldly grabs the blade, turning it away from his neck, and tells Tigu he'll let him have the Manhwa group. He asks Tigu if that wasn't what he truly wanted from him all along. Ignoring the blood dripping from his hand after grabbing the knife, Pildo tells Tigu that all he ever needed was a madman who'd be willing to wield a sword against Manhwa for him. Tigu, realizing that Pildo knew he was being used all along, shouts for him to stop as he walks away. Desperate, he demands to know what Pildo truly wants, insisting that there must be a reason for his actions. Pildo replies that all he wants is to find out who really killed their mother. Tigu, furious, shouts back, reminding Pildo that he's already investigated the matter thoroughly and concluded that it was Kangmu who killed her. Pildo, unconvinced, says he's sure it wasn't Kang Mu and insists that Tigu must uncover the true culprit once he makes it to headquarters. In a flashback, Pildo is shown stabbing Kang Mu with a screwdriver as Kang Mu cries out in pain, begging for a chance to explain. Pildo finally drops the screwdriver, and Kang Mu, gasping, tells him that he only went to the building where their mother was killed because of company-related work. He claims he never had any interest in their mother's life. Pildo demands a clearer explanation, questioning why Kang Mu would go to that place himself if he wasn't responsible for her death. Grimacing from his wounds, Kang Mu explains that Pildo likely never paid attention, but Manhwa was already like a silent battlefield. Problems began to escalate after their father entered politics, as various people within the group started setting their sights on his position. Kang Mu explains that he and Chawuk can manage the smaller rivals, but the real challenge lies with the company's shares. He tells Pildo that with the shares controlled by his brother and the other directors, they couldn't hold back the older shareholders and their father's remaining allies from the merger, as these individuals had enough influence to take over the company themselves. Kang Mu continues, saying these people weren't about to simply hand over the chairman's position to him and Chawuk. With the company slipping from their grasp, they couldn't just stand by. Although their father founded the company, it was they who brought it to its current state of success. They felt it was their right to protect it. The other side quickly noticed their maneuvers, leading both factions to vie for control of the company. Each side raced to secure shares, knowing that control over Manhwa would come down to a numbers game. But this struggle was more complicated, as the person with the key shares, who could determine the company's future, was their mother. Kang Mu then suggests that someone might have murdered her just to claim her shares and seize control. Back in the present, Tigu arrives at Manhwa headquarters. He strides confidently into the building, smirking as all the men bow respectfully. He recalls Pildo's words, if he truly wants to control Manhwa, he must find out who was involved in their mother's death, and spare none of those responsible. Tigu begins clearing out the remnants of Kang Mu's belongings from the office, commenting that he had expected things to feel different at headquarters. However, seeing the way things operate, he finds it just as frustrating as before. Turning to the men who are packing up Kang Mu's things, he advises them that when a new person takes over a room, the first step should be a thorough cleaning. He then stands by the window, gazing out over the city. He muses to himself about why everyone seems to want to reach the top floor. Up here, the other buildings look like they're beneath him. He reflects that being in this elevated position, especially after leaving his previous basement office, has cleared his mind. His men look on as Tigu continues to think aloud, remarking that even though his mind feels clear, he's starting to get a headache and wonders if this is what altitude sickness feels like. One of the men, concerned, addresses him as boss and offers to get him some medicine. However, under Tigu's icy stare, the man realizes his mistake and quickly corrects himself, calling him president. Tigu scolds them, calling them idiots and telling them to start acting like they belong here. He then looks at their attire and throws some money at them, instructing them to buy proper suits. The men gratefully gather the cash and thank him as they exit his office. Tigu then turns to his assistant and tells him that the reason he hasn't been able to come to headquarters until now is because of those men. He instructs the assistant to train them properly so they'll be useful. Next, he asks if the assistant has looked into the matter he mentioned before. The assistant hands Tigu a thick document. Tigu, looking at the pile of papers, questions why he couldn't give him the information on a tablet, saying that using this much paper is just wasteful. The assistant, who still has visible injuries from fighting with Pildo, explains that they had no choice but to use paper due to security concerns. Tigu, unimpressed, calls him old-fashioned and says it's embarrassing to have him as his assistant. As Tigu flips through the document, he grows surprised at the list of names connected to his mother's death. They are all people who have been working at the Manhwa group for a long time. Curious, he asks his assistant what makes these men suspicious. The assistant explains that these individuals managed to get hired at the headquarters despite having no academic background or professional experience. The biggest surprise, however, is that all of them resigned on the exact same day. Tigu then asks when exactly this mass resignation took place. The assistant replies that it happened the day after his mother passed away. Tigu, clearly disturbed, drops the cigarette he had been smoking and crushes it under his foot. Continuing to read through the document, he realizes that each of these men received an extremely large severance payment. Shaking his head, Tigu agrees that there is indeed something very suspicious about all of this. Tigu stays silent for a while, and his assistant, noticing, asks if he's all right. Tigu smirks and tells him not to worry, saying that things are just starting to get interesting. He then asks if the Chinese hacker they hired has retrieved the information. The assistant confirms, explaining that as soon as they gave the hacker access to the main server, he got to work and seems highly reliable. The assistant asks if they should assign more tasks to the hacker, but Tigu shakes his head, saying there's no need, he was simply curious. He comments that the hacker appears to be quite clever, the type of person they need more of, not just muscleheads. Tigu then instructs his assistant to bring the hacker to him when he eventually comes to Korea. The assistant then asks if they should move forward with the people on the list. Tigu snaps at him, asking how many times he has to remind him to think strategically. He explains that now that they've made it all the way to headquarters, they need to avoid getting directly involved in any dirty work. Instead, their focus should be on climbing even higher up the ranks. He adds that Pildo will be the one to handle the dirty work for them. Tigu, feeling hungry, suggests they go out to eat. But, unbeknownst to them, a hidden camera in the office is recording their conversation. Elsewhere in the city, an elderly security guard is seen placing a parking ticket on a car. The car's owner spots him and angrily yells, telling him to take it off and accusing him of being senile for ticketing his car. The security guard explains that he tried calling the man several times, but he didn't answer his phone. He tells him that he can't park there, as it's a reserved spot for the disabled. The man responds dismissively, saying he already knows that, and then asks if the guard has any idea how expensive his car is and if he'll take responsibility if it gets scratched. The car owner warns the security guard that if this happens again, he'll come after him. But the guard stands his ground, insisting that the man should park in the regular lot so the space can be available for those who truly need it. This angers the car owner, who steps forward, trying to intimidate the security guard, and asks if he can't understand simple instructions. Just then, another car suddenly slams into his parked car, making him whip around angrily, yelling at the new driver and asking if he's blind. The car owner, now in a panic, examines his car and complains that it's completely wrecked, mentioning that he hasn't even finished paying for it yet. As the driver of the other car steps out, the car owner arrogantly says they should settle this with a few punches. But to his surprise, the driver is Pildo, who simply shoves the man against his own car, moving him aside without a word. Pildo walks away, leaving the man shocked and even angrier. The man yells after him, demanding he come back, but Pildo doesn't stop. Instead, he grabs the elderly security guard and slams him against a car. Pildo begins punching him as the man, stunned and confused, asks why Pildo is attacking him and what he's done wrong. A crowd starts to gather, and the old man shouts, urging someone to call the police. But Pildo doesn't stop. He keeps landing punches while the onlookers watch, too afraid to intervene. After a moment, Pildo pauses and asks the man if he is Park Cha-woong of the Manhwa group. Pildo pulls out a document from Tigu, explaining that he went through some trouble to track him down using an old photo. He tells Park that if he wants to hide, he should learn to do it better. Pildo then warns that no matter where Cha-woong goes, he'll follow him, even to the ends of hell. Finally, he demands that Cha-woong reveal the whereabouts of the people who killed his mother. In a flashback scene, a group of men is seen diligently cleaning a room covered in blood. The atmosphere is tense as Cha-woong, sharply dressed in a suit, enters the room. He looks at the men and complains that they are taking too long to clean. He demands to know how much longer they plan to drag their feet. The men, undisturbed, continue their work while Cha-woong grumbles about how weak and useless the younger generation has become. Cha-woong's frustration grows as he orders the men to work harder. He tells them to really put their backs into it and scrub with more effort. he emphasizes that they must check every corner and crevice to ensure there isn't a single drop of blood left. He adds that they should not even think about leaving until the job is done. One of the cleaners, frustrated, acknowledges Cha Woong's command and complains about how filthy the place is. Cha Woong, however, responds sharply, asking if it's the man's first day on the job, implying he should be accustomed to such things. Then, with a more serious tone, Cha Woong asks the man where the goods are. The cleaner looks surprised by Cha Woong's continued interest in this matter, muttering that Cha Woong will end up in hell for his actions. But Cha Woong, unfazed by the comment, calmly replies that the place they are in is already hell. Elsewhere in the building, a group of men is seen loading dead bodies into the trunk of a car. As they finish their task and prepare to leave, Cha Woong quietly watches them from the shadows. Their leader makes a phone call, informing someone on the other end that they have loaded all the bodies and will be incinerating them at the funeral home later. Once the men have driven off, Cha Woong steps out from his hiding spot and walks over to the car. He opens the trunk, revealing the bodies inside. A grin spreads across his face as he surveys the scene, commenting to himself that it's no wonder there's so much to clean up. Seeing all the bodies, he says a quiet prayer that may they all rest in peace. Then, with a mischievous look, he removes a gold ring from one of the bodies, biting it to check its authenticity. His face lights up with excitement as he laughs, calling it a jackpot. Cha Woong continues to loot the bodies, taking rings, necklaces, and watches, remarking that it looks like they had gotten rid of some rich people this time. He justifies his actions by saying he needs the money to pay off his gambling debts. As he pockets more jewelry, he is unaware that someone has caught him in the act. The next moment, a punch lands squarely on his face, stopping him cold. Back in the present, Pildo lands a punch on Cha Woong, his face full of frustration. He growls, telling Cha Woong to get himself together. Cha Woong, now tied up to a chair with his arms restrained, winces from the pain and asks, confused, why Pildo is doing this to him. Pildo, his voice steady and serious, explains that Cha Woong was paid a massive sum of 2 billion won as severance pay. He points out that Manhwa company doesn't just move money without a valid reason, making it clear that Cha Woong must have done something to deserve such a hefty payout. Cha Woong, looking weary but defiant, responds that he worked tirelessly for over 30 years. He claims that, given his dedication, he deserves at least that much money as compensation for his efforts. Pildo isn't convinced, and in response, he slaps Cha Woong across the face, his patience running thin. Cha Woong, still dazed, quickly shoots back, asking if Pildo is after the money. He tells Pildo that if that's the case, he's out of luck because he already spent every penny paying off his gambling debts. Cha Woong's anger starts to rise, and he vents his frustration about the younger generation. He asks what's wrong with youngsters these days, that instead of focusing on earning money honestly, he says they're always scheming, trying to rip off an old man like him. Pildo grabs a roll of tape and uses it to cover Cha Woong's mouth, silencing him. Then, without warning, he starts punching Cha Woong repeatedly. After a while, Pildo pauses and coldly tells him to nod if he's willing to answer his question. Cha Woong tries to speak, but the tape muffles his words. Pildo scoffs, saying he didn't expect Cha Woong to be so willing to talk that easily. Pildo grabs a metal rod and viciously stabs Cha Woong. The pain causes Cha Woong to weaken, and he begins to feel the effects of blood loss. Pildo pulls out his phone and starts dialing 119, the emergency number. As he dials, he informs Cha Woong that if he stays in this condition, he will die from the excessive bleeding. Pildo then drags a chair across the floor and sits down in front of Cha Woong. He looks him in the eye and tells him to nod if he wants to stay alive. After a moment, he holds up a list and orders Cha Woong to point out every person involved in his mother's death. Pildo tells Cha Woong that he is sure someone as weak as him could never handle everything on his own. He wants to know who is above him, pulling more information out of him. Cha Woong stares at the list, his mind drifting back to a painful memory, a flashback to when he was beaten for stealing from dead bodies. In the flashback, the leader orders the men to stop beating Cha Woong. He tells them to leave, and then turns to Cha Wung with a cold look. The leader tells him that even though he has worked for a long time, he should not have handled things so poorly. He warns Cha Wung that he knows the consequences of messing with company property. Cha Wung quickly apologizes, explaining that he shouldn't have stolen, but the loan sharks had threatened to kill him if he didn't pay back the money he owed. The leader, understanding the situation, tells him that he's in quite a bind. Either he will die right there or get beaten to death by the debt collectors outside. He admits that if he were in Cha Wung's position, he would have done whatever it took to survive too. The leader asks Cha Wung what the point is of selling stolen goods when he can barely even keep up with the interest. He then offers him a way out, a chance to escape the situation. Cha Wung nervously asks what the leader means, and the leader explains that while it's not an official task from the company, it's a confidential job. He only needs Cha Wung to quietly handle the items they give him, no questions asked. Cha Wung, still confused, timidly asks what exactly they're doing without the company's knowledge. In response, the leader punches him hard, silencing any further questions. Back in the present, Pildo slaps Cha Wung across the face, demanding to know if he still can't remember anything. He warns him again that if he keeps bleeding, he won't be able to nod his head anymore. Pildo then tells Cha Wung to look at the list once more, pointing out that everyone on it quit on the same day as him. He explains that the person behind everything must be one of them. Pildo asks Cha Wung if the name of that person is on the list. Cha Wung looks at the list and nods when he sees the image of the man. A flashback comes to his mind, and he recalls the man telling him to kill the Madam of Manhwa group. As Cha Wung nods in recognition, Pildo demands to know where the man is.